My name is Andreas Gatterburg. I'm a principal technology consultant at Hilscher. For those of you who might not be familiar with it, Hilscher specializes in communication systems for the discrete manufacturing industry. And we have very early on had a look at what happens in industrial IoT. And I would just like to use this opportunity to talk a bit about some of the key lessons we learned, what currently holds up some of the industrial IoT market. And I hope that that will lead to an interesting discussion. Just see my slides. I have to move them here. So netFIELD is just basically a brand name. What you really need to focus on here is the device management aspect. And what I would first like to get into is why device management is a topic that should be interesting in the IoT market. Some of you might already be aware. Don't worry, it will become more complicated as we progress. But first of all, what's this current situation in industrial IoT? So industrial IoT has in the recent years proven that this is not just a fad where people say, oh, we can now connect things to the internet and that's very cool, but for our day-to-day business, it doesn't really do anything. We have found that the use of so-called edge gateways that combine the real-time networks on the field level with the IT networks that we have in the company IT, they are the key currently to also allow legacy systems to be interconnected in an IoT sense. And this solution is spreading widely. Many IoT projects are being undertaken. But the caveat here is that we realized we get a lot of proof of concept projects. We can show that things work. And then somehow it stops. So we had a look at that and said, what's happening here? What is the problem holding up the widespread use of the solutions that we have proven are working? And that brought us to the look at what happens when we want to roll out a solution. And the issue with many projects is this cost of rollout. Configuration and commissioning tasks can be done in a proof of concept project, of course. You have a lot of engineers involved. People are eager to try the new technologies, but the effort that you spend there then does not scale. And if you say, yeah, I can provide you an IoT solution where you don't need so many engineers that work on it day and night to keep everything running or to get everything set up, then it means this solution cannot be customized. So this only works in a certain way. You plug it in and it does one thing, but only that one thing. And then you get an idea what you want to do with your data, and you can't do it because you need to customize it, and the zero touch configuration does not allow that. So the real issue that we found has to be addressed for widespread use in the IoT market is then that you have to have a look at device management. And this is a slide that I took from some of my colleagues in the Labs Network Industry 4.0. I collaborated on that, so it's a joint effort there. And this shows that this whole device management topic is rather complicated. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I use a device manager and he does everything. You have a lot of entities interacting. And if you really want to make some headway in rolling out your solutions, you need a way to somehow manage that. If you're more interested in that topic, by the way, Labs Network Industry 4.0 has published this particular picture in a document on the usage view of edge configuration, just if you want to look it up. So the problem with IoT is you have the edge gateways that you use to get to the data. They might be integrated in your controller, but in any way there is this kind of gateway that connects the operational technology with the IT world. but you also want to manage the devices that you have in your manufacturing plant. So you get a system that has many entities that you really want to have a look at, and you need some clear approach how you can provide functionality for this, while at the same time not just overwork yourself by trying to get a grasp of everything. And I will show you what we found is a good approach how this device management can be done. Special mention I want to put on the fact that the software will be the thing that once you have everything set up becomes the really interesting part, because you can spend the effort to just set things up once. You get a lot of engineers and they will get everything running even without a proper device management system. It can work that way. But then you get to the point where there is a software update. You need to keep everything secure. Somebody found a bug. You want to just update it, or you want a new functionality that is being provided. So as soon as that becomes an issue, you are looking at software management as well. And that is something that you need to do continuously. You don't want to invite somebody over every time you want to update the devices in your plant. Because the way software updates are currently done in manufacturing plants is that somebody goes around with a USB stick and plugs this one into every device that needs that specific update. And we don't think that that scales very well. And it's not very useful if you have everything connected, even through a gateway, to the overall internet where things are reachable and breachable. So yeah, you really want to have a look at how to manage that. And what we did is we defined certain areas of concern that I will show you on the next slide, where we bundle up tasks and say, to properly do device management, you want to really have a separation of concerns. And this separation of concerns then allows you to get a handle on things and really move them around properly as you wish. So that is the idea of what we implemented in the netFIELD platform, and the practical ideas we got from that, I will discuss that. This is the architecture overview of our netFIELD platform. And as you see on the left side of the screen, there is a field device that has some functionality, but that is basically the thing that you manage on the shop floor. And you also need some kind of front end where you want to visualize things for users to interact with. And what we, of course, became aware very quickly when we went into this market is we are not just existing in a vacuum. You also have a lot of other systems that you want to deal with. And I will later talk more about what that means. But of course, we are very well aware that there are third-party systems, and there will always be third-party systems in any customer installation, in any plant that is running. And this also needs to interact if you really want to be efficient. But the main focus here is our cloud platform. The netFIELD.io platform is connected to the field devices through an edge hub and then provides web services to the other systems. So that's the outside world. And what we then do in the platform is we have different packages that do different tasks. And while they can interact on the same data model, you can make sure that if you interact with a certain piece of software, you are only affecting certain aspects of your overall device management system. So you have tasks like the general device management. What kind of devices do I have? What are their network addresses if I want to talk to them? Then you have what we call remote management. I want to put a software update to a piece of equipment. I want to put it to several pieces of equipment. How can I do that? Of course, you need an entity that does access control because these things produce. They are valuable. You need to keep them secure from people trying to harm them or trying to blackmail you by threatening to harm them. You need to manage containers. We will talk on the next slide about why that is an important aspect. But you also need to manage who is accessing it, the tenants that can deal with your equipment. Because you might want to allow certain companies to also access it. You might want to limit that to only people inside your company. You might have different ideas for different pieces of equipment, especially if you only want to have the manufacturer have a look at it, but not any of his competitors or other companies. You can then use API keys. So that's a software key that allows you to access these external interfaces. And that, of course, is something that you need to manage for your security to work. And this here, the data streaming, that is where you will get all the value from, so to speak, for your IoT system. That is, it tells you what data goes where, and then allows you to work with that data further. So this system does not do artificial intelligence predictions for you, but it allows you to configure the inputs that you need for example, AI system to work with your data, or just for a visualization. So if you want to have a web interface, we of course provide some small metering options for visualization, but you maybe have a cockpit solution that's very sophisticated. It ties in with your manufacturing planning system. And for that, you also need to define data inputs and outputs. And you then want to manage, of course, the users and who gets what notifications. So we bundled all that in specific pieces of software. And that allows you to really get a grip on the tasks that are necessary for a device management system to work as a whole. And I would like to go a bit into the lessons we learned in developing this, so as to just share our experience and show you what can be done with these systems today. And one of the topics that I want to talk is containerization. Some of you have heard of that, some of you may not. So this is a picture where we have the in-depth architecture that is behind this. And the containerization means that in our platform, we have something that we call an application container registry, where you can have software that you want to run on the edge level, but also software for the cloud. Have it bundled up in containers that have clearly defined inputs and outputs. And then you can deploy these containers down to your field devices, to the edge devices. And you can also deploy them to other cloud systems or to your device management system, if that is a container that you want there. So these colorful containers are so colorful because this is where a lot of functionality can be bundled up. And we use a Docker system that is the piece of software that allows us to run these containers. There are other solutions as well, but this is still practiced in industrial IoT, that most people provide these containers in Docker. And the fascinating thing about that is that you are not limited to software that people like us at Hilscher provide. You can also take a Docker container that is compatible with your hardware platform from the people who made your device. And they don't have to then customize this to our specific cloud platform. They can just say, okay, this is a Docker container. And they can ask, can you make that accessible? And we can say, sure, we make this accessible. And you, as somebody running a device management system, can also say, okay, I have a container registry where my supplier is giving me software. Can you tie that in? And then that gets tied in, and you can use this software. You can update it through this process. You can just exchange the software containers, retaining certain configurations, and thereby handle the software updates for your overall system. So this is why we think containers are a very good idea, and we see a lot of potential in that. We as a company also work with that in other contexts, and I will come to one of those as well on the next slide. But another topic that you see is this is the as-is architecture that we currently have implemented. So you see customer-defined protocols that are needed for some of the external interfaces. And I'd like to, just give you this overview of what we already achieved. Containerization being one of the big things that we say, this works, it's out there and it does what it should. The next thing I want to talk about is, of course, that our customers embrace us. And I'm very thankful that Dr. Gradwohl from Multivac allowed us to share the statement where he says, this is out there, it works. And we are very happy that we can use this kind of technology in order to manage a machine park that is rolled out internationally. And we are able to manage machines that have been delivered to customers that are running. And we can provide services, we can provide added intelligence, and as he says, create additional value for the customers. And this cooperation that he mentions is something where we also have a look at, okay, what are still open issues? Where are we taking this? And if we have a look then at the overall architecture that we have in the plants, the field device is accessible through an edge gateway. The edge gateway is accessible through our device management. And at the same time, we have things in plants where you want to manage your assets. You want to have an asset management system. You also want to have data analytics. This is where a lot of the value from IoT comes from. So now we saw that the interconnection to these third-party systems is not always easy. And we discussed, okay, what can we do there? And of course, we as a company, we have a solution, but the market is big. There are other companies also dealing in this. And we've thought how to find a way to really bring the benefits to everybody out there that wants to use our systems. And what we then found was that the concepts of the asset administration shell are now taking shape for those who are in the market now. That asset administration shell has been discussed for some years now. And for some people, it felt like, yeah, it's a nice academic discussion, but this is not really getting anywhere. But today, we are happy to say that we are implementing asset administration shell as an interface to asset management systems and to data analytics engines of partners, where we can then utilize the information that we have from the device management and bring this to other systems to work with. And this is something that I also want to state here. Now this whole asset administration shell topic is taking shape, and it is becoming an interface between different IT systems that deal with shop floor entities. And the device management here in our scenario is the access point, but the asset administration shell allows all the systems to work with the information that is gotten and is being provided. And why do I say that? What's it to you? So my message here is, first of all, as a plant owner, device management systems could be of interest to you. You can increase the effectiveness of IoT installations. Maybe you dabbled in IoT and said, doesn't scale. This might be something that you want to have a look at to make it work. And as a device vendor, of course, this is interesting because your devices then become accessible to you. If you have a good relation with the people using it, they can allow you access to the usage information, and you can provide the digital services based on that. As a machine vendor, that becomes even more prevalent, as we saw on the example from our friends at Multivac. You can have an installed base out in the world, and you can manage this. You can help your customers make it or keep it efficient, and you can provide the services there. And as a system integrator, this is also beneficial to you, because if you use this kind of system to make projects more efficient, you become more competitive. You can say, okay, I can set up a plant in 1 week instead of 4 weeks, because We don't need somebody with a USB stick running around everywhere. We can manage it centrally. So your value proposition is much better, and thereby you can secure your standing in the market and the value for your customers that you want to sell. And one last thing I want to mention, I said a lot about the interfaces we developed, about the problems we identified. But of course, we at Hilscher, we are big in communication systems, but we couldn't just define things like that and say, the market now uses Hilscher. It happens with certain under-the-hood technologies, but with these kind of big external interfaces, it's not the way to go forward. But luckily, we are not the only ones with this problem. So we collaborate on these specific issues that I presented to you in this talk, both in the Labs Network Industry 4.0, which is a German association dealing with implementing Industry 4.0, and on a more international scale in the Open Industry 4.0 Alliance, where specifically this asset administration shell interface topic is currently being forwarded, and our implementation is one of the main testing grounds for really getting this whole thing going. So these are my takeaways. I'm not sure with the time, but I think I need to wrap up. So I will happily share my contact data. If you have questions on this, my colleague Jörg Zimmermann is also in Berlin today, which sadly I could not be, and will also be happy to help you. But of course, if you have questions, I think we now should have some time for that.
Andreas Gatterburg, thank you very much for your presentation. And we have some minutes for questions, if there are any in the audience. No, maybe people save it for the booth where your colleague is there. Any questions from the online audience? No? Okay, so thank you very much for this presentation. I'm glad that this video presentation has worked well. So thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Gatterburg.